First step, get your 21mm socket and an impact gun or a good heavy ratchet or bracket bar, and take the front body mount bolts out. All right, next you'll need your 13mm socket and a ratchet. Remove this front body bolt here. Okay. What we're going to show you here is how the stack looks. It won't assemble this way, but this is how it's all going to go together. This rubber spacer has to go back in place. So basically you've got your bolt coming up through the center of that. Everything will be attaching like this. But you will attach the front bolt first, then the rear. So we attach the front bolt, making sure your spacer plate with the hole forward. Starting your bolt, just finger tight. Body bolt back up through the center, through the bushing. Make sure everything stays in line. Again, everything will just be finger tightened. If the steps have binding in them as you're going through your torquing sequence, we supply these shims to help cure that. They go in between the front idler linkage and the rubber body mount bushing. They just slide right in, and when you retighten, and that will realign and free it up. All right, you'll have to remove your sheet metal plug back here in the rear. In the instructions it tells you an approximate measurement of where this is at. You're by the second sill drain is where you're at, but it should be about 26¼ inches from the rear to this position. Just pop that out. You won't be using that, so you can discard it. The motor linkage now will go in place. Install the U-nut into this hole, like so. Lines right up with that hole. Make sure it's secure. This is after the U-nut is in place, take your bolt and your washer, start it in the threads. You don't want to tighten this all the way down. You want to leave it back so the linkage can slide up in place. Okay. Motor linkage, slide it up into place. Have your aluminum clamping plate, hole towards the linkage. Start your bolt. Leave everything loose. You run your bolts up, not tight, but we want to be able to have the linkage so it's free and we can scoot it around. Not sloppy loose, but where we can still scoot it, we have some play. After you've got the linkage in place, go ahead and snug up your bottom bolt where it almost draws the linkage up to the body, but not tight. That's what we want to feel. It's a slight drag at the body. All right, get ready to install the running board now. Make sure the T-nuts slide freely in the running board so it can center itself up. That's very important. So just do all four. There's 2 to each board. Just ensure they slide free. To secure the running board to the linkage, we're going to use the 4 1/4 by 7/8 long socket head cap screws. They go right in here in the bottom. Don't tighten these. These will just be brought up. Leave them loose because we want everything floating. Free floating at this point until we start our torquing process. All right, want to make sure that the running board is slid all the way back till the linkage just contacts the end cap. That's the proper position. And then we're going to tighten these 2 bolts first. There is a certain tightening sequence on the GM diesel 2011, 2012. It's called out in the instructions. These are the first 2 we'll torque right here. These will go to 10 foot-pounds each. All right, next we're going to tighten the second bolt. This will torque to 16 foot-pounds. We're going to snug it up first using our ratchet and socket. All right, tighten the final bolt on the front. 44 foot-pounds on this. All right, now we're going to go to the rear linkage and we will start our torquing process here. We start with this middle bolt according to the instructions. It torques to 16 foot-pounds. And when you are finished with each torque on each bolt, ensure that you can push the board up to the body, and then it drops freely. What we're looking for is if there's any bind, that board has to drop and hit the bumpers internally. All right, tightening the second bolt on the rear linkage. Top bolt, 16 foot-pounds. We're there. Okay. Again, after torquing each bolt, lift the board to the body, let it drop. Make sure she stays free. Okay. Last two bolts we're going to tighten are on the bottom. We snug this up. You get your torque wrench, you'll torque these to 10 foot-pounds. And again, when finished, make sure that that board is able to be pushed to the body and it remains free to drop to the bumpers. That's what we're looking for. At this point, we've followed our torquing sequence for the driver's side. All bolts are torqued tight. Push to the body, she drops free. We're ready to move to the other side. Okay, now we're ready to install the motor. Make sure you have your dust cover in place. Set your motor up in place. Make sure the gear meshes. If it doesn't want to mesh properly, you can just wiggle the board a little bit till she drops in. The board can be in any position as long as that motor gear meshes, and you can start your bolts. So you start your 3 bolts. Torque specs will be in your instruction sheet on this. I believe it's 36 inch-pounds. And that will be the motor installed. All right, we're ready for the wiring end of things now. We're going to mount the controller. You're going to mount that to the support arm using the zip ties that are supplied. The first thing, though, is make sure you remove the fuse out of the fuse holder with controller mounted, and you remove the fuse from the fuse holder. You're now ready to attach the wiring to the battery. Red wire to the positive side, black wire to ground. There you go. With power and ground wires connected to the battery, we now are going to run the driver's side loom across the back of the firewall and down the driver's side wheel well. You're going to be mounting this above the existing loom. As you see, the wire harness continues over across the back of the engine up against the firewall, making sure it's above the existing wire harness, and then it drops down between the wheel well and the fender, right on down to the frame. All right, gently remove this sill plate. This will gain access to the rear door wires. Remove the kick panel. Pull back the carpet. We're going to drill a 9/32 hole right here in the floorboard. This will allow us to put our rubber grommet in, run our trigger wire through. We tape a small piece of wire to our trigger wire, using it as an extension. You can run that up through the floorboard, grab a hold of it, pull it through. Makes it a little easier. Then just remove the extension wire off our trigger wire. You get your Teflon tubing. We're going to run that through the rubber accordion booty between the door. Be sure after drilling the 9/32 hole that you deburr that hole so we don't have any problem cutting through the rubber grommet we supply. A little silicone spray or a little lube like that might help that grommet go into the body. Pull the rubber trim back, helps gain access to the harness. One of the important things to do on your Powerstep connectors, unscrew the gray end on each of the connectors, look inside, and ensure the little needle point is facing out from the body. This way it pierces the wire when you install the factory wire into the U channel. Sometimes these will come through, they'll have the wrong end screwed on. If so, just reverse it. Both ends unthread. Just reverse in so needle point is showing. All right, at this point we're ready to attach our Powerstep. Remember from the first part of the tape, you make sure that the needle point is facing you when you unscrew that gray end. Check all 4 Powersteps. Again, just making sure, junction area, the loom turns and runs under the seat. We want to go beyond that. The loom runs all the way to the rear. All right, we're removing the door panel now to gain access to the door trigger wires. Unlike the earlier GMs, 11 and 12, we have to pull the door panels. There is no cheating and going through the kick panels or any of that. Okay, we use the white Teflon tubing, slide it from the inside of the truck at the kick panel area through the rubber booty into the door, and this will allow us to feed our wires easily from the cab into the door. All right, we're feeding our trigger wire through the tube into the door, back out through the tube, then we just pull the little tube out with it. There's our trigger wire. As you can see, we've attached the passenger side trigger wire to the proper wire. It'll be in a green loom. Sometimes it's in a black loom, depends on what Chevrolet color they wanted that day, but green or black is the loom you're going to be in. And be sure you zip tie the wire back out of the way so where the power window mechanism can't grab it and tear it loose once you finish the job. All right, we're ready to install the LED lighting. As you can see, the butt connectors that are supplied, crimped onto the red and the black wires. And just match your wires, red to red, black to black, coming from the light. All right, for the LED, we peel back the tape, and you're going to clean the body first with some rubbing alcohol or something that won't damage the paint, so we're good and clean. The light just sticks on. Give it a good press to hold pressure against it. And the light's installed. You'll do the same at all 4 doors or both doors if you had an extended cab. All right, after you've completed the wiring, everything's installed. The last thing we're going to do to bring this thing to life is put the fuse back in the holder. Got everything operating, you know everything's functioning properly, then you can put the door panels on last. Install your kick panel and your sill plate. And that wraps up the wiring, front and rear doors.